we looked at, I think we looked back here. Do you guys remember the year we back tested USO last week? Was it 2015? I think it was 2015. It's 2016. Okay. Oh, that's right. I think we entered like around November the prior year though. Okay. So we looked at how a naked put would have fared in USO, and we were looking at this time period, and we got our butts kicked, right? You guys remember how we lost the first couple of months, and we lost a ton of money, right? Well, that was only a couple of months, and you would have had to have continued back testing it. But let's just pretend like those 3 or 4 trades we looked at last week that ended up losing a fair bit of money. Let's pretend like that was your back test. Okay. So what would the conclusion be? Would you conclude that, hey, this is a great strategy? I should just sell puts on USO and not hedge or have any adjustment techniques, but just sell one put each month? I would say no. Right. So I would look at those results, and I'd say, you know what? I got to go back to the drawing board. Given that USO has the ability to drop 40, 50% and not recover, I don't think I can just blindly sell puts without hedging or getting out early if USO drops. Okay. In contrast, so for me, I think you would have to figure out a better way of managing it than just letting it ride. Okay. And so when I see an ETF that has the ability to go from 120 to $9, that's not an ETF that I really want to just blindly sell puts on without having some type of risk minimization or some way of hedging when things go south. Okay, so personally with USO, I'll sell puts on it. I'll sell puts on it. I don't mind doing that, but I won't do it blindly without hedging. Okay. So because USO tends to go down over time, I think it's a product where you could build a better system if you said, I'm going to sell puts, but when USO breaks support, I'm going to sell calls as well to hedge. And then I would come up with some rules that tell me when to add the hedge, and so forth. Or, maybe I say, you know what, I don't want to always be leaning bullish on this thing. So maybe instead of systematically selling puts, maybe I'll systematically sell a strangle where I sell puts and calls. And that way I'm more neutral, and the naked put's going to be hedged from the get-go by the short call. Maybe that would be a better play. Or maybe you look at USO and you say, actually, I'm going to see what it would look like if I was just selling calls. Okay? Or maybe you come up with a trend following system where you say, hey, I'm going to use the 50-day moving average to determine the trend. And let me go back to 3-year daily. And when we're, below the 50-day moving average, I'll sell calls each month instead of selling puts. But if we're above the 50, then I'll sell puts. So maybe I have more of a directional component to improve the system. Okay. Something that I think makes a little bit more sense to systematically sell puts on, emerging markets is one that I've used for a while. And I have a little more confidence that EEM goes up over time, or that sell-offs are temporary and it's not going to go down 95% like a USO. If you look at emerging markets over 15 years, it's a lot more stable, right? So you take out the 2008 episode, and it's been pretty much neutral, right? It's got decent volatility. It's got liquid options. This is something where if I back tested selling puts every month, it would perform a lot better than a USO, right? And you say, well, was that a one-off? Is that because the last 10 or 15 years was a unique and it's not going to be repeated? No, I think EEM will continue to exhibit similar behavior. So I have more confidence in building a system on that. So with USO and with our naked put trading, maybe the takeaway is that we need to pick a different ETF. We need to pick a different underlying. So I build a different system on USO, or I pick a better underlying for the naked put. Okay, I think that would be the takeaway. So that is an illustration of determine if this strategy made money. If it didn't, like in the case of USO, go back to the drawing board. Okay, So with USO, we had to modify the strategy. So what that means is selling puts every month wasn't great, right? So maybe I sell calls or strangles every month and see if that did better, or maybe do a trend following strategy, like sell puts when above the 50 MA, sell calls when below the 50 MA. If you want to try to trade it every month, something like that, right? That better, Hector? Or I say no, I want to stick with naked puts. I just need a better underlying. Maybe EEM instead of USO. Right? So that would be the takeaway from last week's illustration of USO. Okay. Now let me talk about A. Okay. Oh, and you know what? Let me also put one other kind of asterisk on this. Okay. Past performance is no guarantee of future results, right? So what would you say to someone who, after you told them, yeah, I would have made money selling puts in EE in the last 10 years, what if they said, well, who cares? I mean, past performance is not indicative of future results. Who knows what the next 10 years are going to look like? Does that mean your back testing was a waste of time? Does that mean that it's, there's just no use? There's no insightful takeaways from going back and seeing what was typical over X amount of years? I mean, how would you answer that? Because that's what some people say, right? They say, well, who cares? I mean, how do you know if the next 10 years are going to be similar than the last 10? Karen, that's a great answer. That's true, but it's the best data we have, right? And if I back tested the system over bullish, bearish, and neutral environments, that's a pretty good sample. Okay, and it tells me if I didn't make any money in the past with this system, then why bother with it going forward?